Hello, sustainable parents. Flora McCormick here, and I'm excited to talk to you today about how to get kids to listen. I did a survey earlier this week and said, what is it that you are most struggling with? What leaves you feeling exhausted in parenting young kids? And here at Sustainable Parenting, I've worked with families over the last 10 years and love to help families to have strategies that help you parent smarter, not harder. And I hear this come up the most is they won't listen. And there are many videos and things I've offered of suggestions. Today, I want to talk to you about the two main cards to play to get your kids to listen. So when you're thinking of your Rolodex of your strategies, here is what I want you to be reaching for when you're noticing that they are not listening. First of all, I want to know who's here, who's watching. So if you're watching live or in the replay, would you put an emoji so that I know that you're here? I want to know who has showed up to get strategies to know how to get their kids to listen. Good to see you. So first thing is to remember that here at Sustainable Parenting, I'm all about having strategies that are about kindness and firmness at the same time. We can think about this sort of like X of quadrants of parenting. And one quadrant can be very authoritative. You're going to do it because I said so. Authoritarian, excuse me. Like, I'm the boss, you do it because I said so. Your job as a kid is to obey. Now, what I find missing in that strategy is the reality that we aren't just trying to raise a golden retriever, we're trying to raise a human that at 25, we want to be responsible, creative, able to solve problems, independent thinking. And those qualities and many others do not get built by just demanding obedience. So we're not going to go to that card. Another quadrant is just emotional support. Like, we just don't want that poor little soul to be crushed in any way. So we are going to validate, and we don't ever want them to be upset. If for some reason we're asking them to do something and they get upset by it, we get redirected into just solving that upset instead of focusing on the thing that we are working to get done. And so if you find yourself like getting into that, I'm going to tell you today that's not the card that is going to move things forward either. And then the third card would be like just sort of neglect and not caring. You wouldn't be here watching this video if that was you. So the section I want us to land on is kindness and firmness at the same time. And here's your two main cards for that: kindness and firmness. So what do I mean by that? Kindness, when kids aren't listening, is remembering that our relationship is always the first most powerful tool to having a child listen. Think about it. If I have a child that is not getting their shoes on in the morning, they're not getting dressed, they're not getting done what needs to get done to get out the door, and I just focus on the firmness, the behavior side. Get it done. Why haven't you get it done? You're making me frustrated that you haven't gotten it done. Come on, you know what you need to do and you're not doing it. You're missing that this is a human who oftentimes, if there's resistance, there's something underneath it that's emotional. So a different approach to lead into that kindness first is when you notice they're not listening, they're ignoring, they're avoiding, they're not doing this. Let's connect before we correct. So that would mean going over to the child that's not getting their shoes on, not getting things ready to go out the door, and saying, honey, get on my lap for a second. Let's just pause. We're having a hard time getting things done. Pause. Connect relationally Let your heart rhythms line up because you're physically that close to each other. And sometimes I have seen a child just start crying and saying, I'm just so worried about Jenny not being at school today. I think she said she's not coming today, and she's the only girl I play with at recess. Oh, now instead of just pounding that like you just need to obey and you got to do this, I'm speaking to the human that's truly there and I can help problem solve. Then we can get listening. Or I have had a time where my son was just like, I'm not going to school. I'm not doing it. No. And I pulled him onto my lap. We did the 30-second hug. We connected. We did the kindness first. And I just sat there silently with him. He was having a really rough morning. So it might have even been 3 or 4 minutes we sat there. And he just went from resistant, I'm not going, to stopping the whimpering, to then he just kind of shifted into his confident self, stepped off my lap, and went to the shoes. Like we didn't have to have a conversation. It just filled his cup of feeling resistance that morning, feeling some sadness, feeling some hurt. I don't even know. We didn't talk through it. He just didn't want to go. I think it was like a Thursday, the end of the week, and just had some grumpiness. I feel that way about going to work some mornings. I'm sure you do too. And we just connected and it deflated that resistance. So that's one card I want you to work on playing, the card of being able to give them space for connection. The second card then is the structure. So if you find yourself that they're not listening and you're leaning hard into, you've done some connection first, then be clear about what you're expecting in that moment with something I call 2 roads. So 2 roads can be, you know what, honey, I see that you are not, or excuse me, I remember I wanted to make this not necessarily the 2 roads, but an easy way to think about it is to be active instead of passive. So to dig a little deeper first before I just call it 2 roads, to be an active parent versus passive in terms of the firmness is that if I were to hear my child jumping on the couch and I'm across the room saying, honey, we don't jump on the couch. Hey, stop jumping on the couch. Are you seriously still on the couch? That's being a passive parent. To be an active parent would be to say, if you continue jumping on the couch, I am going to take your hand and get you off the couch. Or if you continue jumping on the couch, we're going to lose our TV time tonight or something else, but I have to physically then follow through, whether that means walking across the room, taking them by the hand, taking them off the couch, or something else. I'm going to be controversial for a minute and say that I think there is a space for resets. I like to call it reset, not timeout, because it's not about like go into that room until you feel bad enough to behave better. But if you aren't using some sort of format of being able to say, honey, if you're not listening, you need to go to that space till you can be a good listener again, then you are not going to see your child's behavior change. And this can happen from 1-year-olds up to 10 to 15-year-olds. That you can, in an age appropriate format for 1-year-olds, you can just scoop them up to their crib. Like if they're hitting or throwing things they shouldn't, throwing food, biting something, you just scoop them up, put them in the crib, walk away for like 30 seconds. Doesn't have to be a long time. Just something that's an active parent, not a passive parent. We're not going to just use words and be like, why aren't you listening to my words? We're going to act as an active parent. With older kids, it's finding a space, creating something together. Honey, when you aren't being a good listener, we're going to create this space where you can get back to your wise, wonderful self. And I need you to stay there until you're ready to be a good listener again. And if you want more advice on how to craft that, put your questions below, because I know that this like timeout gets a bad rap in our society today. And again, I'm not a fan of the sort of old school timeout, but I like to think of it as a reset to get back to your wise, wonderful self. And even the preteen or tweens, you can say, you know what? I feel like let's just back it up and we'll try again in a minute. So maybe that's you walking away for a second and gathering your breath, or asking the child to pause for a sec before they try again with that attitude or anything that might be coming up. So this is your two cards to focus on. Your first card is connection, relationship, the foundation, looking what might be underneath by giving a hug, a silent moment together. And then the second card when your kids aren't listening is to be an active parent, not a passive parent. Take action. And if you're not sure how, I've got many strategies to help you do that in ways that are kind and firm at the same time, that are ways to parent smarter, not harder. When you have these tools in your tool belt, I love hearing from my parents. They're like, it's so fun to be able to use these strategies and see them work. You know, I had a mom last week or 2 weeks ago who was saying she had her younger child. She kept reminding, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. It never seemed to change. She was so exhausted by repeating herself 1,000 times a day and not seeing behavior change. She used follow through with connection. And she said he had grandma come over and said to grandma the rule of what is not allowed, and is continuing to not test that thing that's not allowed anymore. Is it really that simple? I kind of can't believe that it was that simple. So I'm so proud of her. Using strategies that are smarter, not harder, you really can have really different results very quickly. It's a matter of having the strategies that work. So thank you so much for being here. I would love to hear from you if you try these, what you notice. And then if you'd like to dive deeper, I do have a sustainable parenting masterclass. I'm going to leave the link below. If you want to have 4 days worth of these strategies that are about 20 to 30 minutes of content each day for 4 days to try these things and start seeing different results of less stress and having your children be more cooperative and connected. I'll leave that link and I'd love to have you check it out. Talk soon.